Hello everyone, welcome to another video, and today is another opinion piece by me. My 2 cents on how Concord is basically the most emblematic game of some of the worst corporate behavior that plague the industry today. And so don't mind the random gameplay in the background, and let's begin. So Concord was a massive failure. A game that Sony promised was the future of online gaming launched with less than 1,000 players on Steam, which is far less than what Sony hoped for. And it only got worse as the week progressed, leading Sony to outright cancel the game and issue refunds to anyone who bought it. And despite outright rumors about Sony thinking re-releasing Concord, Sony did the exact opposite, and to the apparent shock of some people, closed down Firehawk Studios. Concord to me is a symptom of a much larger disease plaguing today's AAA industry. It is a product of a new culture that favors a shift in priorities. Creating great gaming experiences for the customers like it was before took a backseat for corporate shenanigans that's been going on long enough. It managed to ingrain itself into today's social media culture to the point some of the customers have developed a Stockholm-like syndrome trying to normalize said corporate greed and shenanigans that usually leads to constant failures. The disease Concord represents can basically be broken down into 3 points. Point 1. Sony completely misread the market, a common mistake made by many gaming companies today, which usually leads to games like Concord being made, games that basically nobody wanted. Usually when a company wants to create a new product or enter a new market, they send out teams who ask the population using polls what they find more attractive or what in their opinion sounds like an interesting idea. Then they go do a brainstorming session and the most popular option gets to be developed into a product. But not here. The multiplayer market, or to be precise, the hero shooter multiplayer market, is already a crowded place where many games and companies fight for dominance, and yet it seems like everyone still wants a piece of the pie. Everyone wants their own Overwatch. What Sony failed to do here though is look at what others were doing and trying to come up with something new or improve where other games have failed, and so they came to the already crowded hero shooter multiplayer market with the most generic, bland, dull game that has nothing original, nothing to make the players come back for more. There's no interesting story, no characters the players can relate to, just basically empty electric space. Add to this the fact that some brainiac thought it's a good idea to charge $40 for the game when most of its competition is free to play, and the writing was basically on the wall. But the controversy did not stop there. And I mean, other games in the genre like X-Defiant and the like are having a hard time attracting players to this market, and these games are free to play. Point 2. Enter the coping mechanism of ignore all criticism before failure. It's no secret that the public did not have a positive opinion on Concord prior to its release. Nothing in this game seemed to really stand out or look interesting, and so naturally people started talking online about this game's supposed shortcomings. And so instead of listening to what their future customers have to say about the game, the smart people at Sony completely ignored all of it. They could have announced the delay in which firewalk could spend more time making the game have more appeal, but instead chose to ignore all of it, possibly calling all critics bigots, schmigots, racists and basists and all other assorted BSery that is common in today's social media culture. Where companies like AAA companies encounter criticism. And so to the surprise of absolutely nobody on the planet other than a few shocked Pikachus at Sony and Firehawk, the game failed spectacularly at launch and garnered even more criticism from the poor saps that actually bought the damn thing. I mean, they heard the public outcry for the Sonic movie back in 2019 and remade it to look more like what the public wanted, making that movie a financial success even if it came out in the middle of the pandemic. So why not do the same thing here? And now that the game is released and is receiving even harsher criticism. What would the devs at Firehawk Studios do? Enter point 3, the continuation of the modern coping mechanism, lashing out at your customers and by no means taking responsibilities for your own failures. Our story begins in the day of release and the game launches to about 700 players on Steam. So naturally, everyone, both the public and the media, are picking up on this, and reports of how massive Concord's failed launch start to circulate the internet. And so one of these devs of Concord, he went out into the internet and tried to combat this slender campaign. No, that's not what he did, actually. So people were trying to show sympathy to Concord on X, and so this dev came and replied that Concord was a massive labor of love for many talented people, still holding the belief that he had talented people in his company. Another misconception on behalf of Firehawk. And then he went on to say that why should he care what a bunch of talentless freaks have to say about Concord. This is the epitome of modern corporate douchebaggery. The thought that you can antagonize your customer base, that you can insult your customers and walk away from it. These modern gaming devs who make games for the modern audience can sometimes be high on their false sense of security that they can never do wrong or fail. However, they usually reveal their true faces in times of crisis, and so with just 2 words, this single dev doomed Concord to fail. I'm sure there were at least several thousand people around the world waiting to hear the reviews to decide whether to buy this game or not, and now after seeing how you treat your own customers, chose instead to give you a huge middle finger and laugh at you as your company crumbles and you are being thrown out to the streets. This culture of blaming the customer whenever things don't go as you planned is the ultimate and final reason why Concord has failed, and is in itself the essence of what is wrong with the AAA industry today. Instead of taking the more mature approach like CD Projekt Red and Halo Games, who from Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky respectively, who owned their failures, took complete responsibility while vowing to make things better in the future, this dev, who probably grew up in a home where he was the parent and living a life where nobody challenges him, thought that he can get away with insulting his customer base. Did he even want Concord to succeed? This sounds like a pretty stupid thing to say when you're part of a company who at the end of the day wants to profit from your products. So in conclusion, Concord was a stupid game made by stupid, talentless, passionateless people, a game that should have been cancelled years ago after being declared by the community as dead on arrival. And so instead of listening to the community or even doing a decent effort to try and find out what people want to play, Sony decided that releasing a bland, dull, uninteresting game into a crowded market will somehow pay off, while the cocky toddlers of a development team couldn't handle criticism, choosing the teenage tantrum approach, ultimately costing them their jobs. We saw many failed products over the last few years whose developers and publishers had the same attitudes, and yet none of them is yet to come to the conclusion that when a product fails, then maybe victim blaming the customers isn't the best idea. The gaming industry has always been and will always be a cutthroat business in which you either good and remain open for business or you fail and go bankrupt. Here's the hope that Concord's massive failure and its subsequent demise will be an example for future devs and publishers as to what you should absolutely not do if you want to make profit in the gaming industry. Anyways, this has been my 2 cents on the matter. Tell me what you think about this whole mess in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you reach this point, and I will hopefully see you in future videos.